Good morning, Labor, Health, and Social Services Committee. Welcome to 8:29 a.m. We're going to start 1 minute early because we're all here. With that, Barb, if you'd call the roll.
Representative Chadwick.
Here.
Representative Clouston.
Here.
Representative Hornock. Here. Representative O'Hearn.
Here.
Representative Penn.
Here.
Representative Trujillo.
Here.
Representative Ward.
Here.
Vice Chairman Yin.
Here.
Chairman Zwanitzer.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. First up today is Senate File 5, Organ Transplant Recipient Protection, brought to us from our very own interim committee. And I know Representative O'Hearn, this has kind of been your area for the last couple of years. If you have any opening thoughts or if you want to present the bill on behalf of the committee, we'd certainly let you, or at least how it got to us today.
Well,
Turn your mic on. There you go.
well, Mr. Chairman, thank you, but yeah, I brought the donor organ bill last year, and I hear it's a little bit different recipients. We have some insurance people in the audience today, or representatives of them. I think if we just all go over it together, we'll be good to go, or we can bring her up and we can go from there.
And for members of the committee who are kind of new to this, we did have a bill, I guess it's been 2 years now, Representative O'Hearn? Yes. On ensuring that if you were an organ donor, life insurance policies couldn't cancel coverage solely on that basis. If you being an organ donor and giving up a kidney, that you were just as darn healthy as everybody else in the population at large. So then this year, as we were discussing that, we said, well, why not about the recipient as well? Should also be covered, protected, shall we say. But I do know, as you all saw an amendment that got passed out, that causes a bit more concern. So if anybody has any questions on the bill before we get started, we did have 2 meetings in the interim on it. Seeing none, we'll just start with public comment. I'm looking to people in the front row. Ms. Lee, welcome to Labor, Health, and Social Services. Always a pleasure having you. Apparently you've brought some guests today, not in person, but we'll bring them into the room. I see one of them, not the other yet.
Good morning.
And the floor is yours when you'd like it, Kristen. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, and good morning to the committee members. My name is Kristen Lee, and I represent the American Council of Life Insurers, which is a member organization of life insurance companies. We do have, I've taken a look at Senate File 5 and very much appreciate where this is and where it's going. Do have some, we'll have some testimony today to kind of explain where the life insurer organization looks. So today I have with me Ms. Melissa Young, who is the regional vice president. She's in Denver. I assume she's on. Yes. Yeah, thank you. And then we also have Jan Graber, who's a senior actuary. And they have some very short presentations and be able to answer any questions that the committee has. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Kristen before we turn it over? Seeing none, let's start with Ms. Young. Welcome to Wyoming's Labor, Health, and Social Services Committee. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Zwanitzer and the members of the House Labor, Health, and Social Services Committee. My name is Melissa Young, and I'm the Regional Vice President for Wyoming for the American Council of Life Insurers. I appreciate the opportunity to testify on Senate File 5 this morning. As an industry dedicated to promoting long, healthy lives, ACLI members support and encourage organ donation. ACLI members support laws and regulations that enable the accurate assessment of mortality and morbidity risks and require that sound actuarial principles and/or reasonably anticipated experience exists to support any premium or benefit differences among classes of insureds. ACLI has worked in many states on organ transplant donor protection legislation, but Wyoming would be the first state to enact organ transplant recipient protection legislation. While living organ donors are typically healthier than the average population, individuals who receive organ transplants have significantly higher mortality and morbidity risks than the average population from an underwriting perspective. Thus, fair and accurate risk assessment is essential to the viability of a voluntary insurance market. I appreciate the opportunity to testify today on Senate File 5. Thank you, Chair Zwanitzer and the committee, and I'm happy to take questions or wait until after we hear from Jan Graber.
Any immediate questions, committee? Seeing none, we'll go to Ms. Graver. Welcome to Labor, Health, and Social Services. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Swanser and members of the House Labor and Health and Social Services Committee. As Melissa stated, my name is Jan Graver. I'm the Senior Actuary at the American Council of Life Insurers. And thank you again for the opportunity to testify on Senate File 5. So as Melissa stated, the life insurance industry supports legislation that recognizes and encourages organ donation as well as promotion of options for living a long and healthy life. We would like to emphasize that while supporting these initiatives, it is essential for life insurers to retain the ability to underwrite coverage accurately. From a life insurance underwriting perspective, assessing the mortality and morbidity risk for an organ donor versus an organ transplant recipient involves considering factors that impact each individual's health and insurability. Organ donors are usually selected based on their good health to minimize the risk associated with the donation process, and they undergo a thorough medical evaluation to ensure that they are a suitable candidate. Organ donor recipients or individuals that have organ failure and undergo surgery to receive a donated organ. The organ donor recipient may have mortality and morbidity risk based solely on the fact that they have undergone an organ transplant. These individuals have significantly higher mortality and morbidity from an underwriting perspective. In the short term, mortality rates for organ transplant recipients can be higher immediately after surgery and during the early stages of recovery. And this is often due to surgical complications, infections, or rejection of the transplanted organ. With advancements in medical technology, long-term survival rates for organ transplant recipients have improved significantly over the years, and many recipients go on to lead healthy and productive lives. However, there is still a risk from a mortality perspective in the long term, and that's influenced by factors such as organ rejection, side effects from immunosuppressive medications, and just other health conditions. So in summary, organ transplant recipients can generally still obtain life insurance coverage. However, the process of obtaining the life insurance involves considerations and factors specific to their medical history and the type of organ transplant they underwent and their overall health condition. So it's crucial for insurers to be able to consider these risks and complications in their underwriting process. And this helps maintain financial stability and helps us to fulfill our commitments to all policyholders while ensuring that our industry can continue to provide comprehensive and tailored coverage while contributing to the broader societal goals of promoting health and well-being. And I'm also happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Graver. Any questions for any of the three on the before us? Representative Ahern, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do most recipients have just the insurance to cover the cost of the operation and then don't carry insurance after that because it's so high?
So they might have health insurance, but I think this is from the life insurance perspective. But if you know, Ms. Young or Ms. Graber?
Correct. We're speaking from a life insurance perspective. I can't speak to whether, major medical health insurance, if they have coverage in place or not. But from a life insurance perspective, this is what we're talking about.
In some cases, I buy a 20-year, 30-year policy, give my monthly premium every month. 10 years into my policy, I need a new kidney. Pick whatever organ you want, right? I'm probably going to die without. Is this actually, then I find a recipient who wants to donate an organ to me that keeps me alive, thereby not, let's say, cashing in my policy. So there's got to be some benefit, right, to the overall life insurance industry that organ donation is a good thing because it keeps people living longer and not having to pay out policies. Is there any, I guess, benefit or vis-a-vis the, I guess, the negative repercussions on somebody getting that organ? I guess my question is, do they balance out, or we've taken that into account as well? That sometimes there is a benefit of being an organ recipient because it keeps people alive and doesn't have to cash out a life insurance policy?
Mr.
Ms. Lee, go
Chairman,
ahead.
yeah, you're correct. If a policy was in existence, if you buy a life insurance policy when you're 20 and continue your payments, that contract cannot go, no company can go back due to a change in circumstances and rewrite that policy. That policy is in effect for as long as the contract term is, either it's a term policy or a whole life policy. So that can't be rewritten due to a change in circumstances at all. I think the question is, if you have been a recipient and you go in for life insurance, can you be evaluated based on that circumstance? And that each individual person should be evaluated based on where they are.
So
But you wouldn't go back, you couldn't look back and change a contract.
So I'd have my 20-year contract in place, year 15, something bad happens, I get an organ transplant, I'm still covered on that same policy with my same premium up until the end of that 20-year window. But then at that point, instead of continuing coverage, and I know my age would be different, but then they could take into account that I have been an organ recipient and there might be an actuarial bump on top of my age at that point, right? After my original 20-year,
Yeah, you
25-year contract is
couldn't
over,
reform a contract, but
Okay.
going forward, that's my
then
understanding.
it could be taken into account. Okay. Other questions, committee?
Thank you.
Just
Thank you for
seeing
your
none.
time. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
It's always great having you. And thank you, Ms. Young, and Ms. Graber for being here. Don't go too far, just in case we do have some more questions. And we'll take other public comment at this time. And Department of Insurance, I see you in the back of the room. Any comments on this bill? Okay. No one else in the room to testify here on House Bill or Senate File 5? We're just exciting on a Monday morning to watch as a committee, huh? No one else online that I'm seeing. So with that, committee, we'll close public comment on Senate File 5. What's your pleasure?
Move the bill.
Moved by O'Hearn, seconded by Yin. Discussion, amendments, thoughts? I did pass out an amendment in front of you from the American Council of Life Insurers, I believe, and be happy to have anyone move that amendment at this time. And if you do move that, if you delete the word "such" in it, I would be appreciative. Representative Ward moves the amendment in front of us.
Second.
Second by O'Hearn. Thanks. And for those of you who are freshmen, we have a certain senator that if he sees the word "such" in a bill, he will amend it out and we'll have to have a conference committee over one word. And he's been doing it for 20 years. So it's just one of those oddities in life that we don't need an extra hour or two of work on this to, delete that word. Any discussions on the amendment? I assume it's industry standard language when I looked over it and seems to make sense from an actuarial point of view that people who receive organs might not be so healthy after. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was a no on this bill, but with the amendment, it makes it more attractive to me.
Any other discussion from the committee? I'm sure. Question being called. Barb, if you'd call the roll on Senate. Oh, you do.
On the amendment.
We're on the amendment. I'm going to keep drinking my coffee. Everybody, all those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No.
That amendment is passed.
No, I didn't know this. Okay.
Other discussion on Senate File 5? Seeing none, and question being called by Representative O'Hearn. Barb, you could call the roll on Senate File 5.
Representative Chadwick?
Aye.
Representative Clouston?
Aye.
Representative Hornock?
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn?
Aye.
Representative Penn?
Aye.
Representative Trujillo?
Aye.
Representative Ward?
Aye.
Representative Yin?
Aye.
Chairman Wanitzer?
Aye.
9 aye.
It's been a while since that happened, committee. Representative Hornock, how would you like Senate File 5 on the floor? Excellent. All right, we will all be here to help you out should you need it. And I'm sure Ms. Lee would also provide any information if you need. Ms. Lee? Thank you for coming this morning. Always great seeing you in Labor Health. With that committee, aren't we happy I started at 8:30 today? We're moving fast. If somebody would go motion to the good senator across the hall. Next bill up, committee is Senate File 81. And you'll see Representative Clouston and my name on it, as well as Senator Baldwin and Senator Barlow. As it is an issue that's kind of a one-off specialty issue in our statutes that affects 2 counties. I assume we're letting Senator Barlow present the bill, is that correct? He certainly seems to want to, so. We'll give it just a second here for our good colleague to join us across the hall.
Which 2 counties does this affect? I mean, why does it only affect 2?
Certainly could affect more. All right, welcome Senator Barlow. That first one moved really quickly today. So we're now on Senate File 81. And we're happy to have you to present the bill. If you would like to, we'll give you the floor. It's yours.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for your time this morning. We're actually working 4 bills this morning on the other side, so we're on the last one, which is health care certificate of need. I think that's going to take a little longer than the first 3. So anyway, so thank you for your time this morning. You'll see that Chairman Baldwin, his name is actually first on this bill, and that's because the Senate has bill limits. It's actually a bill that came to me from my constituency, from Representative Clouston's and my constituency, of a issue that they are dealing with. So, Mr. Chairman, if I could, I'll just give you the overview. Across the state of Wyoming, there are basically 4 different special district type, or 3 special districts, and then a county hospital district that provide healthcare services within current statute. What we don't have is the ability for those 2 of those to work together, create a 3rd entity, and that entity be considered a governmental entity for the purposes of governmental claims. So that's all this bill does, is if a hospital district in one community wants to work together with a county hospital in another district, in another county generally, to form a 3rd party. The current one in our northeast part of the state is EMS. There's not enough numbers to have 3 different EMS services. They're actually combining to have a single EMS service. And instead of it being owned 3 ways, they're forming a separate entity to operate it, but it's wholly owned by those governmental entities. So what this is just allowing that type of a approach to providing these basic services within, and I understand it's actually being contemplated in other parts of the state as well. It's just a matter of numbers and how you deliver service. So you'll notice that you're getting a blue sheet and it started white. And that is, that's something that there was some discussion as it worked through the committee, and I'll just turn to, I guess, page 2 in the original bill, which you may not have, but the bill that you do have is the engrossed version. In the original bill, it just referred to another section of statute, Title 18, and that Title 18 listed out those 4 entities. I don't, my personal preference, when I look at statutes, I want to know exactly what we're talking about in the statute that we're applying it to, because if you have to do all these referencing. So what we did with this is we just put those 4 entities into the text of this definition, and that's lines 3 through 5, is Memorial Hospital, County Memorial Hospital, Special Hospital District, Rural Healthcare District, Senior Healthcare District. Prior, it was a reference, WS 188301, and then you had to go there to look up to see who was eligible for this. I just personally didn't like that. It was a drafting thing. It was late in the drafting process. So in our committee, we did that. The rest of the bill is exactly the same. Has to do with, and like I said, Mr. Chairman, it's important in this one because this is actually inserted in the definition of what a local government is. So they get an immunity the same as any other local government had. And these entities, like I said, Mr. Chairman, are local government comprised. So I'd be glad to stand for any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. The other thing we did is we made this effective immediately. And here's the deal. What this entity, and now, like I said, a second one that's being formed, they're having to go on to the private market to get their liability insurance. They can't fall, because they aren't a governmental entity in itself, they have to go out privately, which just drives the cost of operations for them. So that's actually, it's a financial issue as well as an immunity issue. So, Mr. Chairman, we're not adding any new type of immunity. We're just identifying there's a particular circumstance where governmental entities could have access to the same type of immunity. Stand for any questions, Mr. Chairman. I do have the Governmental Claims Act here in case there's questions about that in specifics. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Questions for Senator Barlow? Representative Hornock?
So explain the change of word in the bill title, essentially. You go from immune to being subject to. So the, and as far as I understand, there is a certain governmental immunity where outside entities have a very difficult time suing a government entity. I imagine that that will remain in place, but just explain the change of language in that as well. Thanks.
Thank you.
Senator
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very good observation. So we did hear from some of those, the legal community who tries to makes efforts to make claims. And they said, hey, look, are you actually extending a broader immunity to these governmental entities? And that is certainly not the case. So it was, I think it's just a clarification of the intent. The intent is we change nothing with the immunity statutes, just make these folks have access to it. We're not trying to make them even further immune because of the nature of their business. I hope that's helpful. And literally, when we went to staff and this came up in the conversation, they agreed it was probably drafted maybe too broadly to begin with that using the word immune. It's just subject to. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions for Senator Barlow? You have a follow-up, Representative Hornock? Representative Penn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe I'm just a little thick this morning on a Monday, but could you just explain to me a little more thoroughly so I can understand what is it that these guys are not currently able to do based on how it is, and tell me again why it is that we need this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
So, Mr. Chairman, if we will, page 2 of the bill is a definition, local government. Local government, that definition is coming out of the Governmental Claims Act, which is Title 39, Chapter 1. Or Title 1, Chapter 39, my apologies. And so all of these different entities, just looking at the page, cities, towns, counties, all the subdivisions of the state have this immunity ability. And what is occurring, and I think we're actually going to see it in other types of places, but initially it's happening in the healthcare field, is because a county memorial hospital in my community and the hospital district in another or a county memorial in another community and a hospital district in mine, they don't have enough, it's a scale of economic, or there's a right word for it, economies of scale for an EMS service, management, personnel, et cetera. They've decided to join together, create a third entity that can provide this service. Well, that third entity does not have governmental immunity the way this is. At least in the best, I said technically we think they do, but it's not clarified. This is a clarity issue, so that these two entities can both participate and feel like they are and are confident that they have this, because one has to be the lead agency and one is receiving the service. And it's that one that's getting the benefit from that other entity is the one that's concerned that they're not covered. But regardless, both of their legal counsels are saying we got to cover ourselves, so we're going outside to get that immunity or that liability insurance. So that in itself is an additional cost. So this just clarifies they can do this, and they maintain, between the two of them, they both have it, they maintain their immunity. I hope that clarifies. If not, I'll be glad to visit offline if this moves forward. But literally, there's nothing, they're doing their jobs, they're just trying to do them in a collaborative manner. And to do that right now, there's a question whether they actually fall under this definition. If you look at the purest language of that local government definition, you could argue that they probably don't, and that's what their concern is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep, Representative Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senator. Why not specifically draft a statute that says exactly that, what you just said, that they can enter, instead of defining hospitals as local government? I'm sure you can imagine that makes at least a number of us on this committee very uncomfortable.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if you'll go to line 7, committee, special districts are already part of this of the statute. And Title 18 gives them authority to do these things already. What the connection is they don't have the immunity component. So the first draft, Mr. Chairman, if you will, the first iterations stayed within Title 18, and then you would refer to Title 1, and then refer back. So based on our legal counsel's, LSO's suggestion is, if you just put it into governmental immunity, it's already there. All of these entities are already covered under Title I. They're right here, special districts, that's all those 3 special districts, special hospitals, rural healthcare district, senior healthcare district. And then, of course, a county Memorial Hospital falls under county. So they're already all 3 covered. So this is just allowing that formed entity of the combination to also be considered that. All the other, to Mr. Chairman, to your point, Representative Ward, the other combinations were considered. This, to our legal staff's opinion, was just the cleanest way to advance it. And it does not extend any new immunity to any of these entities. It's what they already have. They just now have it in combination or in tandem. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So if you have an ambulance transporting someone to the hospital and they're working on the person in the ambulance and at the hospital, same immunity applies without having to go to 2 separate. Does that make, is that basically where the bill's going? It's kind of a larger, so it's a holistic process that covers immunity instead of immunity for the EMS and immunity for the hospital. Because it's part of the district, it's just, it's not blanket immunity, but it's certainly covered, segued immunity. That's not the right way to say it, but that's what we're getting at here, right? The actual situation where this falls into place, perhaps you could just expand upon a second.
So, Mr. Chairman, I guess getting into very specifics, a hospital district in my community is providing the ambulance service for a county memorial hospital in another district. They're doing that through an agreement with them forming a third party. I mean, they took the ambulance service out of both places and they put it into another entity. There's a lack of clarity in whether that third party, that combined service, enjoys the immunity that's allowed them individually. This clarifies that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Clauston, then we'll go to Representative Penn.
I still see some confusion on my committee, so I'll try to clarify, and I guess I'll ask it in a question. But, so am I correct in that I see Hospital A has immunity, Hospital B has immunity? They form a group to provide services now to both counties. That new group does not have immunity clearly at this point. So what this bill is doing is it's taking 2 entities that already have immunity, combining their services, and now this new group of the 2 hospitals would continue to have that immunity. It's not clear in our laws right now that that happens without a joint powers board, which this isn't. So this is really just to give protection to both hospitals already trying to provide this service to these counties. Is that simple? Is that the way I can describe it?
Mr. Chairman, I should have let Representative Clauston present the bill.
Representative Penn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The thing that causes me heartburn is the phrase government immunity. So I need more help understanding why we think that that's important for government entities to be allowed to have immunity where other private businesses and things can't.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think that that's a much bigger question than this particular one. Governmental immunity is already in our statute books, and the purpose actually is, and anyway, there's a purpose, which, as you know, we've had this conversation a lot of times, the legislature doesn't put in purposes But for governmental immunity, there is a purpose, and I'm not going to read it to you, but there is a purpose. And it's basically to protect services that otherwise, that only the government in generally provides, so that we don't put them at risk of being unavailable because of claims that might further or diminish them to a point of they can't exist. So hospitals, as I said, all of these things have it. So governmental immunity is not something new. That's something very old. We're just asked, or this bill just asked to apply to a very certain circumstance where there's some ambiguity, where there is ambiguity. But to go into the why is there governmental immunity, there's a whole lot of case law. Actually, there's about 4 pages of case law and other things that talk about and the legislative intent, and then case law where it's been challenged. So I don't know that I can give you that. I'm not an attorney. I'm not going to pretend to understand all the ins and outs. I know that's just the current state of the law, and these entities already have that available to them. Now, they don't have it for, neglect. They don't have it for, fraud. They don't have it for all those type of things. It's what they're acting within the scope of their duties, their statutory duties. It's not for, complete immunity. And that's the change that Mr. Hornock pointed out. We're not talking about a special blanket immunity. We're talking about acting within the authorities of within their duties of their authorities. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Yin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Barlow, so I guess 2 hospital districts or a county memorial and a hospital district couldn't create a joint powers board, which would theoretically hold that governmental immunity. Why wouldn't we just put this in the joint powers title rather than in this local government definition?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Yen. That's certainly another approach, but it's not a very nimble approach. Joint powers boards have other challenges, and there's a whole nother set of standards that go into there. The other thing about this entity approach is and where you don't have the same flexibility with joint powers, and I'm not an expert on the joint powers boards. As you know, they're different around, is they don't have, so now we're being approached by, my community is being approached by 2 other communities to add them to this service because they cannot maintain their ambulatory EMS service. So with the Joint Powers Board, and there's former county commissioners here, there's a lot more process involved to get to form these things. I'm not saying that may not be an option for some places, but at least in Northeast Wyoming, it seems this is at least their preference at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, further questions? Seeing none. Thank you for being here, Senator Barlow.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome to stay, or if you need to get back to certificate of need. I'm sure they'd appreciate you, though, but we're happy to keep you. Other public comment on Senate File 81, hospitals. Welcome, Mr. Hannis. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Josh Hannis with the Wyoming Hospital Association. I'll be very brief and also preface my comments with I'm not an attorney and will not be able to answer some of those more nuanced questions. I'd just like to appreciate the bringer of the bill for this to give a little more information around the situation that Senator Barlow brought up, is that we do have 2 hospitals who have come together to help expand access to EMS across the northeastern part of the state. We think that if it shows success, this could be a model that we can scale across the state to help with a part of healthcare that's struggling mightily. The governor's healthcare task force has this as one of their priorities. They have a subcommittee looking at this issue, and we think it's a potentially good model to deliver these services more effectively across the state. And we'd ask for your aye vote on this bill, and I would stand for questions.
Questions for the Hospital Association? And you can sit. You don't need to stand. Seeing none. All right, thank you, Josh. Other people for public comment, press, interns, doctors in the back, just here to listen? Seeing no one on? Yep. Oh, we wouldn't tell Lavonda. Seeing no one else online, we'll close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure on Senate File 81?
Move the bill.
Moved by Chadwick, seconded by O'Hearn. Discussion, amendments, thoughts? Representative Hornock.
Chairman, worked fairly closely with our county here and dealing with contracts and other things. I have mixed feelings about the sovereign governmental immunity type of situation. It does mean that it is very difficult for, sometimes governmental entities can kind of hide behind that curtain, I think. And it does mean that, you know, there's a reason for it, and I understand that, but it's very difficult for any individual then to come against the government when they have been wronged. And I'm a little worried. I understand the need for this. It sounds like we could do it in a different way. And I would prefer to see that different way explored, just because when we're talking about hospitals and healthcare and things like that, we're dealing with not just like somebody walks in to pay their license on their car and they stub their toe as they're doing it inside the county building, and so they decide to sue. We're not talking about that. We're talking about people who are potentially in a life and death situation, and there's all kinds of healthcare decisions, and you know, non-governmental hospitals have a whole host of malpractice issues, and I don't know if this will take away some of that ability for an individual who has been wronged in order to kind of force the hospital to make things right, I guess, in some way. Right or wrong, maybe they're wrong, you know, but at least we have that door open in most private circumstances. So if there's another way to go about that, I would be a little bit more in favor of exploring that way, as opposed to the blanket umbrella of the immunities, you know, sovereign governmental immunity clauses with healthcare situations.
Representative Clouston.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think what you're referring to, Representative, is a bigger question, right? What's going on in this situation is one county, which already has immunity, is trying to help out another community that their ambulance service already has immunity, but they don't have the providers. Like what we've heard is this combination with our hospital going up, helping the county to the north, has saved lives, right? And it's providing a service they cannot provide on their own. We're also hearing from the counties to our east, they need help. They don't have the services available. So they can continue to do this, but at a higher cost, because right now they all have to take out extra insurance because they're not sure that they have the immunity. So that's the question, right? So, I mean, by doing this, we're making sure that these already groups that have immunity are providing a service that's needed at a lower cost for everybody. So I agree with what you're looking at, but I think that's another issue, right? This issue is more of, we need these services, they are being provided. If this is in law, we're providing these at a lower cost to everybody. So I know where you're coming at from the theory side, but I think that's a bigger question than what this deals with.
Other discussion? Seeing none. And someone calling the question. Question being called. Barb, if you'd call the roll on Senate File 81.
Representative Chadwick?
Aye.
Representative Clouston?
Aye.
Representative Hornock?
No.
Representative O'Hearn?
Aye.
Representative Penn?
No.
Representative Trujillo?
No.
Representative Ward?
No.
Vice Chairman Yin?
Aye.
Chairman Swanitzer?
Aye.
5 aye, 4 no.
And Representative Clouston, you're carrying this bill on the floor? I'm sure I'll back you up, and a couple other people of the committee. Thank you, Senator Barlow. Give our regards to the wonderful House bills sitting over in the Senate currently. I hope they all pass. Okay. Don't stop now. Any other information to come before the committee today? Committee, I don't believe we have any bills yet for Wednesday. We do have one, but hopefully we'll be assigned more this morning and tomorrow. Some more Senate files coming. With that, we might start at 8, might start at 8:30 on Wednesday, depending what bills come to the committee, and we'll let you know as soon as I can. Have a good morning. See you up there at 10.